Welcome to Look Ahead Radio with Tom Arms and Lockwood Phillips.
Now for Viewpoints Around the World, Tom Arms joins us here. Hi, Tom. How are you?
Hi, Ben. It's nice to hear someone else's dulcet tones.
Well, we'll see how dulcet they remain as we go through news, the news and the news to come. Of course, from Look Ahead Radio, Tom Arms is with us from LookAheadNews.com. And Tom, let's get right into it here. What do you want to start with today?
Well, we normally start with talking about the weather, which is about in the 50s here.
Yeah, a little foggy too there today.
No, it's not foggy at all. Fog is not really the problem it used to be in London. The great London fogs were not fogs, they were smogs caused by the damp air pushing the coal smoke down into the streets.
Well, and I wore my classic London fog raincoat just for you, Tom. So
if I'd only known. But anyway, I've been reading up, as always, on the elections and also on the how people are responding to the elections around the world.
Right. Of course, American elections. There are elections other places, but you're looking at these elections, right?
Well, are there real elections in other places? I mean, the only real election happening in November is going to be the one happening there in North Carolina.
Yeah, we are at the heart of it, and we have
one or two other states as well.
We have Donald Trump is in Kinston, North Carolina this evening. He's all over North Carolina today. Hillary will be back tomorrow in the area, and Bill Clinton was in Greenville near our studios for Viewpoints Around the World, near us in Greenville, not too far away, just yesterday. So yes, this is the heartbeat of the election right now.
Well, I hear you're a swing state.
That's what I've been told, although it's illegal, I think.
It'd be really interesting. Last week, we had a lot of phone calls because I had the temerity to suggest that Trump should not have gone about saying that the elections were rigged and that he wouldn't or he'd hold judgment on whether or not to accept the result because of the damage that he would do to the democratic process there in America and America's moral standing in the world. And I think your switchboard almost crashed with people wanting to stick knives in the back of Tom Arms, the liberal in London.
Yes, I heard that. And, I didn't hear it brought up. I just wonder why we didn't have that same apocalypse after Al Gore challenged the election with George Bush.
I was surprised that wasn't brought up as well.
Yeah.
I was in Washington at the time it was heard at the Supreme Court. And I was making statements and people were trying to stab me in the back then, actually in the chest as well. But
well, actually at the time, I had to remind my liberal friends and also my friends who are actually from Tennessee that if Al had just carried his home state, he would have been president. So, there's as usual, it's hard to blame the referee for everything. Sometimes the loss takes place earlier in the game.
Yeah, no, I agree. But on the point I raised last week, it's very interesting what's being said in China.
Mm-hmm.
And the People's Daily there, which is the sort of organ or semi-autonomous organ of the Communist Party,
mm-hmm.
is saying that for decades it is said that American democracy is a sham. That is, the People's Daily has said.
Sure.
And that it was rigged by a narrow elite. They've been claiming that in China for years. And now they say they've got proof. The Republican candidate for the White House agrees with them.
Okay. We're going to... So I have a couple of exceptions.
What I said last week.
Yes.
About, how it's damaging the moral authority of the United States.
Okay, I have a couple of points to make with you in just a minute, but Ernie in Emerald Isle wants to go first, so let's allow him that pleasure. Hi, Ernie. How are you?
Hey, hello, Ben. Related stuff. I'd like to talk about the polls, these so-called polls.
Mm-hmm.
Ben, I'm 70 years old. I was born a United States citizen. I served 4 years in the military. I don't have a criminal background. I've been a licensed driver since 1963. I've been a voter since I was 21 years old.
The bona fides are evident.
I have held I've owned a business. I've held responsible positions for employers. I have never been polled, and I have a few friends that are take my age, a couple a little younger, one guy older. They've never been polled. So my question is, who gets polled? How do they decide who gets polled? Because I can't put any stock in the polls because no one ever asked me. No one's ever polled me.
My grandfather,
and I have voted in every general election. I haven't missed a whole lot of local elections in 50 years.
Well, I haven't been called for local jury duty either. And I think that's a shame. That's another point. I have never been called for jury duty either. Yeah.
And it's got nothing whatsoever to do with my status as a citizen or criminal background. But that's another story for another time. But why have I never been polled? Why are these fellows that I know just more or less like me? No one's like me, but
right.
I've never been polled.
I actually interviewed a polling agency about this once, and the problem is that there are only so many people they have working for them. And so they have to choose a set number of people from a certain socioeconomic background. And they tend to poll the same people over and over and over again.
That's right.
So something like this, they will have a sample, representative sample of 2,500 or maybe 5,000 people. They don't just pick them up off the street.
Well, Ernie,
they've researched them. They worked out what their income is, how many children they have, and so forth and so on. And these are meant to be representative of a segment of the society they live in.
Okay, Ernie, thanks for your call. When we come back, I actually want to make a point about polling to Tom that relates to where he is sitting right this very moment, and we'll talk about that, and also his comments about the Chinese government talking about through the daily, and also about some other reactions from Chinese citizens about U.S. democracy and some opinions that Americans have about that. We'll get back to that coming up in just a moment. Viewpoints Around the World with Tom Arms. I'm Ben Baldwin for Lockwood Phillips, and we'll be back in just a moment.
Look Ahead Radio will return in just a moment.
This is Tom Arms with LookAheadNews.com's World Report for the week beginning the 31st of October. LookAheadNews.com broadcasts tomorrow's news today so that you can plan to participate. It looks as if Hillary Clinton has an unassailable lead as the U.S. presidential race enters its final week. But Americans are not the only ones preparing to head for the polls. Next Sunday there will also be elections in Nicaragua and Bulgaria. On Tuesday, Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro has been ordered to appear before his country's parliament to answer charges of violating democracy. The South African Finance Minister, Pravin Gordhan, will appear in the Pretoria High Court on Wednesday, charged with establishing a spy unit inside his country's revenue service. Also in court next week is Bahraini human rights activist Nabil Rajab, who's due to hear the verdict on charges of spreading malicious anti-government rumors. Freedom of speech in Germany faces a legal challenge when Turkey's President Erdogan takes German television comedian Jan Böhmermann to court for making him the butt of tasteless jokes. Staying in Germany, the Christian Social Union Party, coalition partners of the ruling Christian Democratic Union, holds its annual conference in Munich. There are a host of diplomatic visits next week. Colombian President Manuel Santos Calderon is in London, and British Prime Minister Theresa May is in India. Chinese President Xi Jinping visits Peru, Myanmar's Aung San Suu Kyi is on a 5-day trip to Japan, and Cypriot Foreign Minister Ioannis Kassilidis is in Russia. And finally, it is Guy Fawkes Night in Britain next Saturday. Bonfires will be lit, effigies burnt, and fireworks will light up the night sky as Britons celebrate the thwarting of the 17th century plot to blow up Parliament. And that was next week's News Today, so that you can plan to participate in the world around you. Stay tuned after this message for Look Ahead World Analysis.
They say the best things in life are free. So, hey, why are we paying so much for our basic information and entertainment needs? The average cable TV bill has more than doubled in the last 10 years. The price of movie tickets keeps going up. So, exactly what is free today anyway? Well, you're listening to it. Local radio. Support the advertisers that support this radio station. And keep listening. We won't send you a bill. There are still some things you just shouldn't have to pay for.
This is Tom Arms with LookAheadNews.com's expanded world analysis for the week beginning the 31st of October. Look Ahead broadcasts tomorrow's news today so that you can plan to participate. National opinion polls put Hillary well ahead of Donald Trump, but Professor Vaughan Williams at Britain's Nottingham Business School says forget the pollsters. Listen to the bookies. He claims they've successfully called every U.S. election for 150 years. Where are they putting their money? On Hillary. Elections are also around the corner in Bulgaria and Nicaragua. In Bulgaria, the voters are electing a president, parliament, and holding a referendum on restrictions for political funding and changes to the electoral law. The two main presidential candidates are socialist Roman Radev and Setska Sacheva from the center-right Gerb party. 70-year-old former Sandinista leader Daniel Ortega is expected to easily win a third term as Nicaragua's president. But Ortega has been attacked by the Obama administration for refusing election observers. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro remains under attack. The latest effort reaches a climax on Tuesday when he's been summoned to appear before Parliament to start impeachment proceedings based on charges of violating democracy. Backed up by his hand-picked Supreme Court, Maduro will almost certainly refuse to show up, which is likely to result in another round of violent demonstrations. The plight of Bahraini human rights activist Nabil Rajab has won the support of Secretary of State John Kerry, who visited Rajab in jail. The activist has been supporting the cause of the Shia majority in Bahrain and opposing Saudi Arabia's war in Yemen. Next week he hears the verdict on charges of spreading malicious anti-government rumors. The German courts have already rejected one attempt by Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan to charge comedian Jan Böhmermann under a 19th century law which prevents the ridiculing of foreign heads of state. But next week a determined Erdogan will appeal the ruling. He was upset by the German comic's poem which suggested that he enjoyed sex with goats and children. Next week, German junior coalition partners, the Christian Social Union, hold their annual conference in their Bavarian stronghold of Munich. Chancellor Angela Merkel's pro-refugee stance has annoyed the CSU leadership, but not enough for a coalition fracture. However, the conference is expected to see efforts to water down Ms. Merkel's policies. And that was next week's News Today so that you can plan to participate in the world around you. Stay tuned for Viewpoints Around the World with myself and Ben Ball.
Viewpoints Around the World with Tom Arms from Look Ahead Radio and LookAheadNews.com. And Tom, you're talking about the Chinese reaction to the elections and about the poor example of a democracy around the world, moral high ground and all of that. You know, as an expat, you probably know the phrase, here's a nickel, call someone who cares. Because, Tom, I think a lot of Americans don't care about the feelings of the Chinese or feelings of others around the world.
But the point is they should. And this is a really important point to try and get over to people. Because people like to do business with people they like and respect. And you want them to do business with you. You want them to buy your cars and your clothes and your wheat and everything else. Because if they don't, you won't have jobs.
Well,
as
I read in the India Daily, for example, they're turning down American offers to help with a pipeline during the Obama administration, instead choosing Russian. As I read in the French English newspaper, they're turning down American imports for other imports and Russian as well, too. And so how did our feelings get us there?
Well, as I said, I mean, it won't work every single time. You know, price is a factor, service is a factor, all these things are factors. But one of the factors is the issue of respect and the issue of actually liking someone. I like to do business with people I like. Well, I like to do business with people whom I respect. In
Well,
the 50s,
that's
America
an
was-
interesting equation to put like and respect in the same issue. I think if I knew President Obama directly, I think I would like him. I think I would like Bill Clinton as well. I don't respect their opinions.
Well, I think you can respect someone without respecting their opinions. I honestly, I believe that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in the 50s, America, when it was a real economic powerhouse in the 50s and 60s.
Well, when we actually made
a
stuff here.
respected country around the world.
When we
than
actually
it is
made
now.
things. We made things. We exported things. That's why we were respected. People wanted American cars. I mean, they still have them in Cuba.
Now, you'd also played a major part in setting up the United Nations. You played a major part in winning World War II. You played a major part in the Korean War. You played a major part in standing up to communism. You played a major part with the Marshall Plan. All those things fed into the equation, Ben.
But now we're looking at
It wasn't just the fact that you controlled all the production plants.
Mm-hmm. But now
it was a factor, but all the other things happened as well.
But liberal administrations now are withdrawing that kind of standing around the world. We don't. I mean, if you look at the respect that other countries have for the United States, it's not based on whether or not Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton is president. It's a
factor. It's a factor. I mean, let's go back to China here, and then I think we'll have to move on to something else.
Okay.
But I think you have a situation in the world today where there is a conflict, and the basic conflict is not between communism and capitalism like it was during the Cold War years. It's between an authoritarian type of government and a representative democracy government. The latter being represented by the United States and Europe, and the former, the authoritarian, is the Chinese and the Russian examples.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the Chinese are saying, we're better. Look at us. Our economy is growing. Our people are happy. They recently had a happiness survey saying how happy they were. Look at us. You should follow our example. Now, if countries like Philippines...
And who exactly conducted the happiness survey? It was the communist government.
It was an American company. The Pew Research Center conducted the happiness survey.
Right. All right. Let's go on to another subject, but first hear from Gary in Oriental. Hi, Gary. How are you?
Hi, Ben. Hi, Tom. How are you tonight?
Okay.
Hi, Gary.
Hello. So, Tom, you were saying that about you feel that we need to be respected, and the deal around how our candidate should be liked. As an American, unfortunately, the way I view it right now is we as Americans don't even like ourselves anymore because our political arena has gotten that corrupt, that out of control. And you went through the same thing with the Brexit vote. The polls were way off, and what happened. And we're experiencing the same thing here right now. We the people, I think our respect comes from us as Americans being able to work and be able to provide. But, we've been giving and giving and giving, and finally, America has finally had enough, and we said, we're not doing it anymore. We have to give to ourselves. And I really believe, Tom, and if you think about the big picture, if we can start producing again, manufacturing, which our manufacturing is absolutely gone, and start having some fair deals, some fair trade deals, respect comes with that. Respect comes out of power. Respect comes out of manufacturing. Respect is not done by just the virtue of a personality, which is what Hillary Clinton wants to do. She wants smiley faces and puppies, and I'm sorry, but that just doesn't sell America, and it doesn't buy products. What's your take on that?
Well, I partially agree. I'm not saying that a smile will do it all on its own, but I think that it has to be fed into the equation. I think it's important that America is strong militarily. I think it's important that America is strong economically, and I think it is important that America is strong morally. Its whole political foundation is based on moral bricks. The Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, those are moral statements. And you've got to live up to them. Otherwise, it undermines other things.
Well, that's interesting. Again, as moral statements, then are we recognizing the author of that morality? We are seeing that erosion take place day by day in the U.S.
Anyway, I wanted to raise tonight also something is happening in the Middle East, in Turkey and Jordan and places like that, and that is the plight of Syrian refugee children.
Okay, we're going to get to that in just a second. Lisa, and thanks, Gary. Lisa in Morehead City with a question, with a comment on us on this subject as well. Hi, Lisa.
I think what you're talking about the view of the world and America relating to this, and I can say this with some confidence because I do know a lot of people from the UK. How I did that was just kind of knowing about Brexit long before the people here really even knew what the name was. I've chatted with, and I chat regularly with Stephen Winstone, and I have a little bit of a line to Nigel Farage, though it's more like he'll just answer and give me his opinion back. But Stephen and I talk, and I do know this. I think you're being a little disingenuous about China and Russia and what's going on in the Middle East, because we're about to get very close and dangerously close if Hillary Clinton is elected to World War III. And I know that people throw that out and go, oh, just World War III. But no. I know my history a little bit, and I also know that China and Russia is furious with us because we have gone. What this Arab Spring has been all about is dismantling the basically Africa itself with all of its riches. Putin has said from the beginning, along with China, we have no business going in and overthrowing Gaddafi. Gaddafi, for example, the Africans in South Africa, North Africa, Zimbabwe, the union that they've been forming, they have so many riches there, and the Africans were treated so well; they were all treated the same. And what they didn't do was they were not with the bank of the Rothschilds. They would not join the IMF, as well as his money he gave to other African nations to be rebuilding. Well, guess what? Now Libya is in spoils. We have created, because of the Saudi Arabians, we have created. And this is what China and Russia believe. They believe that we're doing the work of the Saudis to create all this turmoil and all of this exodus out of there. And we're taking the vast riches of those African countries because Mali has been destroyed. The Congo is it. I mean, and you just talked about Syria and the children of Aleppo. Did you know that Hillary Clinton put on, and so did, I guess with the blessings of Barack Obama, but she put this on, that we put sanctions on them, and that includes medicine. Now, I can send you a tape personally of our doctors with those children, and they're dying because they all have cancer, and we cut off their cancer medication.
Well, let's get Tom's reaction to this because we're going to have to move on to some other subjects, Lisa,
okay.
But thank you.
The people here in Europe think the more likely candidate to cause World War III would be Donald Trump, to be honest.
Well, the headline in SputnikNews.com says that the Chinese think that Trump may start a trade war, but Clinton
quiet on the subject.
The
Chinese are being very quiet on the subject.
Well, the article today, Tom, for a second. The article in SputnikNews.com today says that China and U.S. elections, the comment from Chinese authorities there is that Trump may start a trade war, but Clinton could begin World War III.
Well, very interesting. Clinton could. I mean, Obama's been floating his ships around the South China Sea, and that's what could cause a conflict.
Yeah.
The Chinese are very concerned about that. But if you look at at the same time, everyone says you want to show strength. You look at the South China Sea. That control of the South China Sea is very important to link South Korea Japan, that entire region, to Europe and America.
I don't disagree with that. I think that's very true. Yeah. And that's where we have watched more American assets going into Asia for that very reason. We're watching to see that now. We're going to probably be putting more of the Defense Department budget that way. You do bring up a great point, a subject about Syria and children. We want to get to that, too, coming up next on Viewpoints Around the World here on the Talk Station.
Look Ahead Radio will return in just a moment.
Quick, what do these sounds have in common? These are the sounds of geography. Geography helps us understand connections between people and places. But our kids aren't getting enough of it. Half can't locate Japan or India, and 20% can't even find the Pacific Ocean. So we created MyWonderfulWorld.org to give kids the power of global knowledge. Go to MyWonderfulWorld.org to learn more. It's a wonderful world.
Tom brought us a subject that is of utmost importance. Tom, is about Syrian refugees and children.
Yeah. There was a program on Monday night here on the BBC, a program called Panorama. It's an investigation program, investigative journalism, reporting that Syrian refugee children were being employed in textile factories in Turkey and being paid about $1 a day. And the products were being sold in Britain and Europe and America. And this was, almost slave labor.
Yeah.
I thought I'd do a bit more research into it, so I contacted Save the Children, and they said basically that's the tip of the iceberg. They have been doing research with UNICEF, and they say that something like 2/3 or 3/4 of all households surveyed by Save the Children and UNICEF in 2015, that is the refugee households, 2/3 of those, or 3/4 of those surveyed, half of the refugee children are now the joint or sole family breadwinners. And that is children as young as 6 years old. Now, what are they doing? They're selling their bodies for sex. They're working
awful.
in these. They're actually being sold themselves and being sent overseas. They are being sold to beggars to beg on the street because children attract more money. It is criminal.
It is criminal.
What's happening
now? Do you know through any of these organizations? For example, I was looking at the BBC report about being Syrian children being exploited in Jordan, which should be a friend.
In Jordan and Turkey, yes.
And as young as 3 years old, being exploited illegally as child labor in Jordan. Is there a way to find out what manufacturers are using them and what might be coming to the U.S. that's made by these children?
Well, you have to go to each factory. I don't know how you do it. I don't think that is the answer. I mean, Save the Children has their own suggestions, and that is basically to create jobs for the adults.
Right. Okay.
What's happening now is that the host governments don't want these people to be employed. They want them to stay in the refugee camps because once they get employed, they settle in, they become part of the community. They don't want to have to be permanently responsible for them. Children you can get rid of. They're at the low end of the work scale. So they can easily be dismissed. But adults, it's a bit more difficult. So you've got to find some sort of employment for the adults so that they can support their families. And the other thing is you've got to supply schools for the children. There's no proper education for them, or very limited education. There has to be an alternative for the children other than going out to work.
Doesn't this fall into, though, what has been a long-standing problem across Europe? And I'm assuming parts of Western Asia as well. Then is if you ghettoize these refugees only in their camps, you are creating, again, terror camps. You're creating possibilities for terror to arise from these camps. So integrating them into a society or would be a better thing.
Yes, I think it would be. But you can't have them integrated entirely into Turkey or entirely into Jordan. 3 million, I think it is now in Turkey. Right. That'd be a lot to expect Turkey to take in. Right. And I think it's a million or more, 2 million. I can't remember what it is in Jordan, which is not a large country.
Yeah, the other end of that is to solve Syria. And that's, of course, a huge
Yeah, well, obviously the thing to do is to solve the Syrian conflict. And that is what people try and do. Which brings us along to that famous subject of Mosul.
Yes. Yes. Well, we certainly have a lot of people in this immediate area where the headquarters for viewpoints around the radio around the world that have fought in Mosul before. So here we are again, going back and trying to kick ISIS out of Mosul. And there's some strategies, new strategies that ISIS has developed to make that more difficult.
Yeah, no, they have. They are certainly. There's about 2,500, 3,000 jihadists still in Mosul, and they're facing about 35,000 Iraqis and Kurds, which is roughly 10-1, and that is probably the right ratio you need to dislodge really tough defensive positions. But these people are setting out suicide bombs. They're mining everything in sight. They've got snipers at every corner. They're going to fight to the last man. Most of them do not come from Iraq or Syria. Most of them are foreign-born. They're either European or they're American or they come from North Africa. A lot of them come from Tunisia, Morocco, places like that.
And some of the other
fight literally to the death.
Some of the other
they cannot go home.
Some of the other strategies that are happening as well is that they are creating other diversions. For example, as you get closer into Mosul, they're attacking sites just outside of Syria.
Yes, they are. They are, and the U.S.-led coalition is coming under attack for not doing more about helping in Syria. And their response is, as the Pentagon spokesman said, we can't be in all places at once. And it's right. Mosul will fall. It's not going to be a quick falling, unfortunately. Okay,
well, we have Walter and Alliance standing by. We're going to get to you, Walter, in just a second as we come back with Viewpoints Around the World with Tom Arms, the expat from Look Ahead Radio and LookAheadNews.com. You can read more about him and about his opinions, his thoughts, his articles in Tuck Magazine, and some other things too. You can find them there online at LookAheadNews.com. And we'll be back with Tom in just a moment. Walter, hang on. We're going to get to you next.
Look Ahead Radio will return in just a moment.
Observations of an Expat by Tom Arm. There's a new Cold War. It has nothing to do with the 20th century philosophical war cries of communism, socialism, capitalism, or free enterprise. The capitalists won, at least for the time being and the foreseeable future. No, the new battle is between which political system will underpin world capitalism. Will it be the top-down authoritarian political structures of China or the bottom-up representative democracies of the US, Canada, and Europe? For the winner, the prize is political supremacy with all the attendant financial trappings of trade and prosperity. Because we live in a results-driven world, at the moment it would appear that the exponents of authoritarianism are in the ascendant. Chinese growth has slowed slightly, but it's still nearly 4.5 times that of the United States and the EU. Europe and the US, by contrast, appear incapable of recovering from the self-inflicted banking crisis of 2008-2009. and have sunk into a slough of populist-inspired political pessimism which targets the establishment for every problem from job losses to the latest fight with their partner. In contrast, a survey in China reported that 92% of the people were happy. 76% think the economy will improve over the next 12 months. 70% said their personal financial situation will improve. And 8 out of 10 people believe that their children will have a better standard of living than they did. The survey was not conducted by a Communist Party functionary. It was conducted by the American company Pew Research Center. The Chinese are quite blunt about the reason for their success. They state with absolute conviction that their underlying political structure, which they call consultative democracy, is superior. And they point to the current U.S. presidential election as absolute proof. The race to the bottom will make people rethink the value of democracy, commented the Chinese People's Daily recently. A Chinese student was reported on the BBC as unimpressed, end quote, by the U.S. elections and American democracy. She was reported as saying, "I think the competition will just intensify the clashes between different social groups. I don't think this system works." Earlier this month, the Chinese Communist Party held a conference on their consultative democracy and its benefits for China and, by implication, the rest of the world. Yang Gui, a well-known Chinese television newsreader, told the conference that it was a mistake to use the ballot box because you have to suppose every voter is rational and reasonable. He went on, "People seem to forget serious issues. They talk about sex, locker room conversation, men, and lousy behavior. Debates are getting nasty, and that undermines the strength of Western democracy." Senior party member Fang Xinghai said the strength of China's consultative system is the intense deliberation which takes place behind closed doors inside the party. This, he claimed, has allowed China 40 years of uninterrupted growth within a stable system. Quiet deliberation, he says, is a more effective form of policy than a public shouting match. Policy making is complicated. The Chinese leadership do actually consult their people. They do this because 8,000 years of continuous top-down civilization, punctuated by periodic violent upheavals, has left the elite conscious of the need to deliver the goods or find themselves swinging from a Shanghai lamppost. And as surely as the sun rises in the east, the time will come when the Chinese economy dips. When that happens, the people will have no alternative for regime change other than through violent upheaval. The West, on the other hand, will still have the ballot box, which is why, as Winston Churchill said, democracy is the worst form of government, except for all the others.
And welcome back, Viewpoints Around the World. Tom Arms from LookAhead Radio, LookAheadNews.com. And Tom, kind of in a lightning round here, we have Walter standing by, but I think he'll comment on this subject. Is that I know you posted that you wanted to look at the EU-Canada trade that's still in the balance and is controversial. What's your thoughts here?
Well, EU-Canada they're basically still trying to persuade Wallonia, and there's negotiations between the federal Belgian government and Wallonia to try and persuade the left-wing government in Wallonia to accept it. Now, the point I made last week is if they can't get the EU-Canada deal through, which is called CETA, they're definitely not going to get TTIP through.
Right. Yeah, and which is one that...
I mean, Canada deal is like a mini TTIP.
Yeah.
And it is having problems.
And it's had its role in the U.S. election, not a major one, but it's being talked about. So Walter in Alliance joins us for a moment. And Walter, let me make it real brief with you because we only have a couple of minutes. Walter?
Yeah, in regard to the vacuum created by us not making sure that we had everything together in Iraq after the war, after we took it. Similarly, it seems to me, and this horse has been out of the barn for a real long time, the decline in colonialism created a lot of these problems.
That's an interesting perspective.
Yeah, I can almost tie it together with the program you had this morning about teenagers getting crazy.
Yeah. All right.
I would say the only stable colonial state would be India.
Walter.
Okay.
Walter, I'm going to interrupt you there. That's rich coming from a former colonial.
Yes.
Well, yeah, I understand that. My parents are British, and you're the only one on the radio that can appreciate any of that.
All right, Walter, I'm going to have to let you go here, but let me just, let's get into a kind of a little lightning round here, because, again, that colonialism, ensured trade. I mean, that's certainly the Brits know that. And now we have to negotiate all these trade deals. Go ahead into some of your other subjects that we want to talk about real quickly.
Well, we've got the primary system, which you have in America, is now catching on in France.
Maybe they'll get super delegates too.
No, they're not going to have. It's not going to be quite the same.
Yeah.
But they're having the two main parties. In fact, three parties: the Green Party, the Environmentalists, the Socialists, and the Republican parties, are each having presidential primaries to decide who is going to be the presidential candidate when they have the elections in April. And the first round of the environmentalists has already been held.
Mm-hmm.
The Republicans are having theirs in a couple of weeks' time, and the socialists are having theirs in December.
At least they do it across the whole nation. They don't do it piecemeal like we do. So maybe they'll learn from that.
Smaller country.
Okay. How about in Heathrow? The idea of expansion in Heathrow, we have the same issue here with when government wants to take land and property, and in this case, a lot of houses, too.
Well, the Heathrow thing is taking over the headlines here. And it's very interesting because it has just disrupted things on so many levels. The Member of Parliament for Richmond, which is under the flight path for this new runway. They're going to build a third runway at Heathrow. And that has just been approved by the government. Now, it still has a lot of hurdles to go through. There's going to be legal challenges and everything else. But the first step is getting government approval. And the Member of Parliament is a man called Zach Goldsmith, a billionaire, who's a member of the Conservative Party, which, of course, the Conservatives are in power here in Britain. He has resigned in protest. And that has forced them to have a by-election in Richmond, which is his constituency. Now, this is going to be interesting because it looks like the main issue is not going to be the airport.
Huh.
It's going to be Brexit.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes, because the number two party there is the Liberal Democrats, who are the only really pro-EU party left, big pro-EU party left. And they're number two. They did very well in a recent by-election. They almost unseated the Conservatives from it. They're likely to take Richmond, and this is going to have an impact on the negotiations with the EU.
Okay, well, we'll be following that one, but we have to get to the most important story of them all, Pierce Brosnan and a product that he was supposedly endorsing.
Yeah, he thought it was a mouthwash. And it turns out it was a sort of tobacco chew almost.
Yeah, Pan Bihar is called.
Pardon?
It's called Pan Bihar in India, and it's a long tradition.
He's ended up he was plastered all over the television, all the front pages. He thought he was advertising a mouthwash, and apparently it's something they sort of swish around in their mouth and chew a bit, and it turns bright red, and they spit it out on the pavements. And it's cancer producing and everything else, and all the oncologists hate it. And so he's apologized to all his followers in India. He said he was misled, and I'm terribly sorry. I didn't realize that this was such a horrible thing, and he's taking legal action.
Yes. Meanwhile, his picture is still out there. And by the way, the photograph makes him look like a contender for the most interesting man in the world.
It does. Actually, it's great. He's got that great moustache and beard, and that full head of hair.
All right, follow Tom Arms. Again, you can find him on Look Ahead Radio and LookAheadNews.com. Tom, next week. We'll see you then.
Look Ahead Radio is a production of the Talk Station.